Good morning. Welcome to Amir Shakil 5858. I'm Amir Budnam. I'm thankful to all news resources and my team. Following other news which have been reported by American, European, Australian, Canadian, African, and Asian channels, and also by AFP, AP, and Reuters news agencies. Now the news in detail. Capital gains tax hike in Canada. Far right rise in Europe. Atlantic shark attacks in Florida. Verdict of Hunter Biden case. Donald Trump meets the probation officer. Social media, smartphones, and teens' mental health. Meta lawsuit. Miami building fire. Moderna vaccine shots. Apple's artificial intelligence strategy. On Wall Street, Nasdaq, Dow Jones Industrial, and S&P 500 all increased. Macron snap election call produces united left front. Ukraine president in Germany. First time UN Security Council approves ceasefire resolution on Gaza. Mr. Blinken in Middle East again. A person shot in Sydney, Australia. Apple shares slide in Australia. Children in Sudan, a humanitarian crisis. Presidential election process has started in Iran. Rwanda, tourism and entrepreneurship. Indonesian president in Jordan for Gaza talks. India's new cabinet. Heat wave in northern India. Now the news in detail.
Good evening, I'm Amna Nawaz.
And I'm Jeff Bennett. On the NewsHour tonight, the UN Security Council for the first time endorses a ceasefire in Gaza as the U.S. continues its push for a deal after a bloody weekend hostage rescue by Israeli forces.
Former President Donald Trump meets with a probation officer as jury deliberations begin in the trial of Hunter Biden.
And a popular book sparks new debate over the links among teen mental health, social media, and smartphones.
I think there are a lot of factors that are attributed to this rise in anxiety and depression, but this has accelerated it.
Major funding for the PBS NewsHour has been provided by the ongoing support of these individuals and institutions, and friends of the NewsHour, including Leonard and Norma Chlorfine, and the Judy and Peter Bloom Kopler Foundation.
Two retiring executives.
The reliable reporting and strong storytelling you've come to expect from the NewsHour. And with that, let's turn to the news.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken returned to the Middle East today with meetings in Israel and Egypt. He is pressing leaders to accept an Israeli proposal for a hostage and ceasefire deal, one that received a vote of confidence today in the United Nations Security Council. But the fallout from an Israeli hostage rescue that killed hundreds of Palestinians continues. Nick Schifrin begins our coverage.
For the 8th time since October the 7th, Secretary of State Antony Blinken
remaining in Gaza. One of them is 22-year-old Amir. He's an American and Israeli citizen and was serving as a tank commander in the Israel Defense Forces on October 7th, stationed on the Gaza border when he was taken captive by Hamas. His parents, Orna and Ronan Nutra, join me now. Welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So Orna, tell us a little bit about your son. I understand he was born and raised in Long Island. He spent a gap year in Israel, deferring college back in 2020 and decided to stay.
In the day's other headlines, the jury in Hunter Biden's criminal trial has started deliberating in Delaware. Earlier, prosecutors told jurors in their closing arguments that no one is above the law. Hunter Biden's defense attorney countered that the prosecution failed to prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt. The president's son faces 3 felony charges related to his purchase of a firearm in 2018. A number of Hunter Biden's family members showed up to support him today, including his aunt, Valerie Biden Owens, and uncle James Biden. First Lady Jill Biden has attended every day but one of the proceedings. The Supreme Court will take up an appeal from Facebook parent company Meta over a shareholder class action lawsuit. The case centers on Facebook's handling of the Cambridge Analytica scandal when the personal data of roughly 87 million users was improperly gathered in the lead-up to the 2016 election. The plaintiffs filed the case in 2018 after Facebook's stock fell as the scandal came to light. They argue the company did not fully disclose the risks that users' information could be mishandled. The court will hear the case during its next term, which starts in October. In France, public opinion polls predicted today that the far-right National Rally Party would win snap elections next month. It's the first gauge of French sentiment since President Emmanuel Macron dissolved the National Assembly yesterday. That followed his party's defeat to the far right in the European Union parliamentary elections over the weekend. The French National Assembly building was nearly empty today after its dissolution. The snap elections are scheduled for 2 rounds, one on June 30th and the other on July 7th. That's just a few weeks before the country hosts the Olympic Games. Firefighters in Miami have been battling a massive blaze that engulfed a 4-story building this morning. Plumes of smoke rose over the city's downtown area as responders used ladder trucks to drench the flames, filling streets with water and foam. Miami's mayor said 3 firefighters were hospitalized for heat exhaustion and over 40 residents were evacuated. At the scene, first responders also found a man in critical condition with gunshot wounds. Officials say the shooting was an isolated incident. A combined shot for COVID-19 and the flu may be a step closer to hitting the market. Vaccine maker Moderna says that in late-stage trials involving adults over the age of 50, participants who took its combined shot had significantly stronger immune reactions than those who took 2 separate shots. Side effects were reportedly minor and similar to those seen when shots were administered separately. Moderna says it hopes to launch the combined shot by the fall of 2025. Indiana Fever star guard Caitlin Clark is taking the high road following news that she didn't make the cut for the Summer Olympics. The top overall pick in the WNBA draft says she'll be rooting for Team USA to win gold in Paris. Competition for a spot was fierce. At least 7 players from the 2020 gold medal winning team are returning this year. Clark says she's already setting her sights on 2028.
Honestly, no disappointment. I think it gives you something to work for. It's a dream, hopefully you can be there. And I think just a little more motivation and do that. And hopefully in 4 years, when 4 years comes up, I can be there.
Clark has helped draw countless new fans to women's basketball in her budding pro career, and the WNBA is enjoying its best season in decades. The league is boasting its highest attendance in 26 years. More than half of the games have been sellouts. On TV, games are averaging 1.3 million viewers across all networks. That's nearly triple last season's average. Apple rolled out its long-awaited artificial intelligence strategy today as it works to keep pace with rival Microsoft. CEO Tim Cook announced the new technology dubbed Apple Intelligence, which will integrate AI across the company's suite of apps. That includes a partnership with OpenAI to bring ChatGPT to its devices. CEO Sam Altman was in the crowd for the announcement. This is the second straight year that Apple has used the event to announce its entry into an area of technology where others have already tread. Last year was all about the mixed reality headset. Shares of Apple closed down nearly 2% following the announcement. As for the broader market, Wall Street ended modestly higher as investors look ahead to Wednesday's inflation data in the next Federal Reserve meeting. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 69 points to close at 38,868. The Nasdaq gained 59 points, closing at a new all-time high, and the S&P 500 also ended in record territory. And a passing of note this evening, the Reverend James Lawson Jr. has died. The civil rights leader, labor organizer, and university professor was an early advocate for nonviolent protests, and he was a close advisor to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The two men met in 1957 and shared an enthusiasm for Gandhi's nonviolent approach. His family said he died on Sunday after a short illness in Los Angeles. Lawson was 95 years old. Still to come on the NewsHour, Tamara Keith and Leanne Caldwell break down the latest political headlines. And a revival of Sondheim's Merrily We Roll Along gains rave reviews and Tony nominations.
This is the PBS NewsHour from WETA Studios in Washington.
Into the future.
And we hope that you will join us again back here tomorrow night for a look at an effort underway in North Dakota to block people over the age of 80 from representing the state in Congress. And that is the NewsHour for tonight. I'm Amir.
This news is funded by viewers like you. Please support our work at democracynow.org/give. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Officials in Gaza say Israeli forces killed 274 Palestinians, including at least 64 children, in the Nuseirat refugee camp during an Israeli military daytime raid on Saturday to free 4 Israelis who'd been held hostage in Gaza since October 7th. The hostages had been held in 2 apartments in Nuseirat, one of the largest refugee camps in Gaza. For 2 hours, Israeli forces attacked the area by air, land, and sea. 1 Israeli soldier died in the raid. Hamas is claiming 3 other hostages were also killed. Over 700 Palestinians were injured inside the refugee camp. A survivor described the massacre.
We were in Nuseirat camp. Special forces arrived from an Apache helicopter, and there was a white car with special forces. The Apache started to bomb and fire directly at people. There was a large number of martyrs and injured people. People fled. There's a big number of displaced people. Schools and hospitals are filled with displaced people. There's a large number of martyrs, and firing was direct. We brought 10 injured people in 1 ambulance. 1 of them was shot directly. We barely made it out through the alleyways.
Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has called for an emergency UN Security Council session to discuss what he called a bloody massacre, as the overall Palestinian death toll in Gaza has topped 37,000. The United States reportedly provided intelligence to Israel to aid the hostage rescue effort, including drone imagery collected over Gaza. For months, the U.S. has been flying MQ-9 Reaper drones over Gaza. Israel evacuated the hostages from a beach near where the U.S. built a temporary pier to bring humanitarian aid to Gaza. The U.S. has denied the pier was used during the Israeli military operation. Israel's also denying our interviews with Leonard Peltier, as well as those about his case over the years. Go to democracynow.org. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy.
Tonight, breaking news as we come on the air. Hunter Biden's federal gun case late today, now in the hands of the jury. What we've learned: the major fire in Miami, the rescues, and news just in tonight of an arrest. We're tracking severe weather, extreme heat. It's moving east. And a breaking headline from China at this hour reports 4 American teachers have been stabbed. What we've learned so far. First tonight, Hunter Biden's federal gun case. The jury now deliberating his fate. Hunter Biden choosing not to take the stand. Members of his family, including the First Lady, in that courthouse. The prosecution aware of that during closing arguments and what the prosecutor told the jury about the family sitting in those front rows. Also breaking tonight, Donald Trump's interview with a New York probation officer. That interview required of all convicted felons. What that probation officer will now do with the judge set to sentence Trump in weeks. The chilling new images here from inside the Israeli operation to rescue 4 hostages in Gaza. The moment soldiers find 3 of them. coming under fire while getting them out. Israeli special forces posing as Palestinian refugees, saying, "We got the diamonds" when they found the hostages. You'll see these harrowing images from the inside. Here in the U.S. at this hour, the severe weather threat on the record heat across multiple states, and all of this heading east. And tonight, Florida now bracing for potential flooding up to 20 inches of rain. Also, the massive fire near downtown Miami, the city's largest fire in 25 years, rescuing more than 40 people, and the worker in the building found shot nearby. Tonight, there's news coming in on the suspect. The shocking damage to a passenger jet struck by a hailstorm coming into land. Part of the plane's nose ripped away, the cockpit windows shattered. The dramatic video of spectators at a rodeo when a bull jumped the barrier, heading right for spectators, flipping a woman into the air. And America Strong tonight, the moment on the Antiques Roadshow, the woman who has held on to a cherished baseball bat for years, and what it's worth now.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight.
Tonight, we are on Verdict Watch. The fate of Hunter Biden now in the hands of a jury. Deliberations underway in Hunter Biden's federal gun case. Prosecutors calling the evidence against the president's son ugly and overwhelming. The defense saying the government failed to make its case. The First Lady in court for nearly all of it. And today, Hunter Biden declining to take the stand. Also tonight, we'll show you the dramatic new video from that hostage rescue in Gaza. Israeli forces coming under heavy fire as they find 3 terrified hostages inside a 4th hostage. You may remember her face. The young woman kidnapped on a motorbike from the Nova Music Festival, finally reunited with her family. The growing death toll in Gaza from the raid and our exclusive reporting. Could the U.S. cut Israel out of negotiations to free the Americans still being held? Just in, former President Trump required to meet today with a probation officer after his hush money conviction. The massive inferno at a Miami apartment building. An employee found shot. What we're learning. New reporting on the crisis at the border. The warning from law enforcement. The dangerous gang crossing illegally and committing crimes. And Apple's big entry into the AI race. The new iPhone features. Siri's getting more chatty. And the emojis you will now be able to create.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
And good evening. I'm Tom Yamas, in for Lester. Turn our attention to some of the most shameless and morally corrupt people in America. That would be the Bidens. Many in the mob, the media, they love to point out that Hunter Biden's ongoing trial is an example that even a Biden can face justice. But in reality, Hunter's trial is but a perfect example of the lengths your government will go to, allegedly, to protect the son of a prominent Democrat. Now, according to the very real contents of Hunter's very real laptop, the president's son engaged in a life of crime for many years. The evidence seems transparent and overwhelming, but you decide. It was on a massive scale. Remember the fallout of the 2020? 51 intel experts signing off on a letter claiming the laptop had all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation. This after 3 years of lies being peddled over and over again, the Russia hoax by the media mob, all of it a lie, all of it based on a dirty dossier. The dossier becomes the basis of lying to FISA courts 4 separate times, 3 of them signed by Mr. Higher Honor himself, James Comey. In reality, the so-called experts were spreading disinformation. All they knew about the laptop was nothing. They only knew they wanted Joe Biden to win. You think they'd apologize? Don't hold your breath. Now that the laptop is official evidence in Hunter's gun trial, Fox News Digital reached out to all 51 intel experts that signed on to the letter, and most had no regrets at all whatsoever. They got what they wanted. They helped Joe Biden get the election in 2020. Some even claiming that it was the patriotic thing to do, a means to an end. Anyway, of course, Joe Biden is now president. The evidence of the alleged wrongdoing on that laptop is shocking. You have rampant drug use, hundreds of thousands of dollars seemingly, I can't say for sure, spent soliciting sex, purported tax evasion on millions of dollars in income that needs to be investigated, refusing to even file tax returns in certain years, along with the possibility, should be investigated, of money laundering, the possibility of FARA violations tied to his own father. Many Americans can rightly sympathize, sure, with Hunter's addictions and personal struggles, but not the millions and millions and millions made with businesses in which he admits he had zero experience at all, or the shady actions of his father's Department of Justice, which is politicized and weaponized. According to the New York Times, the DOJ prosecutor that's tasked with investigating Hunter, this guy David Weiss, remember, he's going to sweep the whole thing, Plan A, under the rug, no charges at all, after purposely letting the statute of limitations run out on some of the most serious tax charges from the Burisma years. Plan A, well, got ruined by 2 brave IRS whistleblowers. On to Plan B. That was the sweetheart plea deal that looped a temporary gun charge in with a few minor tax violations, no jail time. Sadly, Plan B was ruined because the judge actually read the plea deal and started asking real questions about the totally, completely unprecedented nature of the deal. And now we're on to Plan C. Well, after years of investigating, let's make this guy the special prosecutor. Let's go into a friendly venue in Delaware in a courthouse there and hope for the best. The jury has officially begun their deliberations. You know, any outcome won't surprise me, including an outright acquittal or a hung jury, but they'll decide if Hunter is guilty on the 3 felony charges. Count 1 accuses Hunter of lying on an ATF form when purchasing a gun, swearing that he was not addicted to drugs. Count 2 accuses Hunter of lying to the gun dealer. Count 3 alleges that Hunter illegally possessed the gun while addicted to drugs or actively using drugs. The evidence seems to me overwhelming based on evidence from the trial. One day after buying the gun, Hunter texted his girlfriend he was waiting for his dealer. The next day, Hunter texted his girlfriend he's smoking crack. So let's be clear. These allegations are not a joke. Joe Biden, his fellow Democrats, don't they love to lecture you about gun control? In fact, President Biden is now proposing tighter regulations surrounding lawful gun ownership and steep penalties for anyone who dares to step out of line. And yet his own son is on trial for gun crimes. But if this is the only trial that Hunter faces, this will only prove that Biden's DOJ, as we have been telling you, is politicized and weaponized. The judge instructed the jury to ignore Hunter's ties to the first family, but let's be clear. It's because of those ties that Hunter now is only facing gun charges in the Biden-friendly venue of Delaware. He's not getting the Donald Trump treatment like Trump got in New York. with a valuation of Mar-a-Lago at a mere $18 million in a case that involved, well, valuations. The judge in that civil trial was more guilty of valuation fraud than anything they accused Donald Trump of. And then, of course, we have the case of Alvin Bragg. Misdemeanor statute of limitations expired, upcharge it to a felony election crime, but don't even tell Trump what you're charging him with. You know, more importantly about the Bidens, why did foreign, oligarchs, why did they pay Hunter Biden millions and millions of dollars according to the Johnson-Grassley Senate report? What services was he capable of providing if he was admittedly addicted to drugs at the time? Now, if he was lobbying on behalf of a foreign entity, why didn't he register with FARA? Isn't that required by law? And why did Hunter and the entire Biden family use over 20 shell corporations, according to the House Oversight Committee? Were those accounts actually used to funnel foreign funds to different members of the family? Interesting questions, right? Did the big guy financially benefit from Hunter's foreign deals in any way? According to the laptop that apparently is very real, well, the big guy had 10% put aside for him, and Hunter complained bitterly about giving half his income to Pops and complained about paying for Pops' home repairs. Why did the big guy lie to you, every one of you watching this show, about meeting with his son's business associates? Remember, Joe said over and over, he never one time ever spoke to his son, brother, or anybody about these foreign business deals. Devin Archer said that he...
On this Monday night, political gains over capital gains. The federal government tables its motion for a controversial tax hike targeting the wealthy.
But millions more will benefit from it.
Why they may be banking on the opposition to vote against it. The aftermath of Europe's parliamentary elections, the far-right fallout suddenly pushing France into another risky vote. Plus, dual shark attacks within a day down in Florida.
Extremely unusual for it to happen in the same afternoon.
Why Atlantic Canadians are being asked to be vigilant. And from the court to the classroom.
If you just believe in yourself, you don't know where it can take you.
The BC Streetball Stars now working to inspire at-risk youth.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Maura Nasser.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. The federal Liberals drew a line in the political sand today, officially tabling a motion to increase the contentious capital gains tax. It's a cornerstone of their 2024 budget, and it could add close to $20 billion to federal coffers over the next 5 years. But many of Canada's doctors and other business owners are not happy. As Eric Sorensen tells us, the opposition leader has yet to say how he will vote.
I ask that an order of the day be designated
With no fanfare.
And it has remained at that rate until now. We're hearing reaction from the Prime Minister tonight after a National Security Committee last week alleged some members of Parliament wittingly participated in foreign meddling. We're also learning today that the federal government will support a push to expand the scope of an inquiry into the issue. Our Ottawa Bureau Chief Mercedes Stephenson is following developments for us tonight.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau took questions from the media for the first time since the scandalous allegations that parliamentarians have colluded with foreign powers broke a week ago.
I think it's extremely important that we continue to take foreign interference with.
We will be making further recommendations for the coroner's advice on...
Security Committee last week alleged some members of Parliament wittingly participated in foreign meddling. We're also learning today that the federal government will support a push to expand the scope of an inquiry into the issue. Our Ottawa Bureau Chief Mercedes Stephenson is following developments for us tonight.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau took questions from the Commission, but experts have already said the inquiry scope is too broad and the timeline is too short. Farah?
Mercedes Stephenson in Ottawa. Thank you, Mercedes. For the first time, the United Nations Security Council has approved a U.S.-backed ceasefire deal. 14 members of the council voted in support. Russia abstained. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken also began another visit to the Middle East to push the Biden administration's latest peace plan.
The only party that's not said yes is Hamas. That's who everyone's waiting on. That's Hamas want to end this conflict.
The soldiers and hostages appeared to barely make it to safety as shots were fired around them. They were then loaded onto a military helicopter with flights back to Israel. Canada and the UK are teaming up to investigate the 2023 data breach at genetic testing company 23andMe. Privacy watchdogs will examine the scope of the data that was compromised and whether the company had proper safeguards to protect the highly sensitive information it handles. The investigation will also look into whether 23andMe adequately notified regulators and the nearly 7 million affected customers about the leak. The company sells DNA test kits to consumers to uncover information about their health and ancestry. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Quebec Premier François Legault are vowing to work together to address the province's ongoing struggle with immigration. Legault says Ottawa is offering $750 million to help pay for the recent surge in asylum seekers.
I think it's about time that we put targets with figures, and the problem is urgent. So we cannot say we'll continue working for months and months about the principles. It's about time we put some targets.
This comes after Legault and Trudeau met today in Quebec City. Legault had been asking for $1 billion to cover costs incurred from 2001 to 2023. According to Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, Quebec received more than 45% of all asylum applications last year. In addition to the money, the federal government is pledging to work with other provinces to distribute temporary immigrants across the country and to improve the visa system. In Toronto, the smoke has settled and the scope of the damage to the city's historic St. Anne's Anglican Church is clear. The treasured dome roof, once adorned with intricate artwork, is gone, and paintings by 3 Group of 7 artists have been destroyed. Toronto police say they are not currently treating the fire as suspicious. No one was injured, as the church and National Historic Site caught fire on Sunday morning.
And I was just ordained as a priest actually in this church 2 weeks ago. Even just this morning, neighbours have been coming by and sharing their memories of weddings they attended there.
It's such a loss for not just those who are part of the community itself, but right across the land. It's an architectural gem that's gone.
St. Anne's was built in 1908, and church leaders are vowing to rebuild. Closing arguments were heard in a Winnipeg courtroom today in the trial of a confessed killer. Lawyers for Jeremy Skibitsky want him found not criminally responsible due to mental illness, but the Crown argues he knew what he was doing when he allegedly preyed upon Indigenous women in homeless shelters. And a warning, some of the details in this story are disturbing.
Protesting and drumming in the streets outside of court as lawyers made their closing.
Buffalo women, the location of her remains are still unknown. Farah?
Marnie Blunt in Winnipeg. Thank you, Marnie. Bad news tonight for anyone living in Calgary. It's going to be at least 3 to 5 days before water use in the city will go back to normal after a major water main break last week.
We want to know if any of the adjacent pieces of pipe are also damaged in any way before we start closing this up. So do we have to remove another piece of pipe or not? So we're waiting for that analysis.
Today, crews inserted an inspection tool into the pipe to confirm if any other portions need repair. Once that information has been analyzed, the city hopes to provide an updated timeline for when water restrictions will end. The cause of the break is still under investigation. Emmanuel Macron's big gamble coming up. Can the French president's risky snap election stave off his rising far-right rivals? The voters in France had barely cast their ballots in Sunday's European elections when President Emmanuel Macron told them there would be a national parliamentary election in just 3 weeks. Macron called the vote in response to his humbling defeat in the EU vote, the far-right National Rally Party getting more than double the votes of the president's Renaissance Party. But as Redmond Shannon reports, gains made by hard-right parties were more modest across Europe as a whole.
46 days to the Olympic Games, but a new clock has suddenly started ticking across France.
J'ai décidé de vous redonner
President Emmanuel Macron's election call for the end of the month after a huge defeat for his party in the European elections, losing out badly to the far-right National Rally.
Qui sont des patriotes.
Its leader Marine Le Pen says she wants to bring together all men and women who are patriots. The decision of Macron to go to the polls in the face of such a result came out of the blue.
Like most French, I was absolutely stunned.
This political analyst notes Macron has been repeating itself. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Still ahead, why Atlantic Canadians should keep caution at the beach. Beachgoers in Florida are on high alert after 2 shark attacks happened just 6 kilometers apart on the same day. Although experts say such attacks are rare, it's a reminder that people can often find themselves in the same waters as ocean predators. Heidi Petracek reports on the attacks and what they mean for beachgoers as sharks follow their food north.
Warning flags in Walton County, Florida signaled the waters here were off limits after 2 shark attacks in the same area of the Panhandle Friday injured 3 people, 2 critically.
Extremely unusual for 2 to happen in the same afternoon within 4 miles of one another.
Experts say shark attacks are statistically rare. Officials are trying to figure out exactly what happened and why.
This time of the year, there's
marine life may still be present. Swim at your own risk. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
Handle with care. Next, how a pair of Canadian street ballers is using their story to inspire at-risk youth. A former Canadian streetball group is the focus of a documentary chronicling their rise, fall, and rebirth. Known as Nautic, they played outside the confines of professional basketball, but still left a lasting impression on the game. As Neitha Garcha reports, their story is now serving as an important teaching tool in the classroom.
On the court, King Handles and Johnny Blaze, as they're known on the streetball scene, find connection and community. The sport served as a refuge from the challenges of assimilation and discrimination they faced as youth.
Remember when we used to do this stiff leg? Yeah. Shift the hands. Yeah. Side to side. That's the Johnny Blaze signature. Yeah.
It's also what brought them fame as teenagers.
I think it's my first love. You know what I mean? Streetball is my first love. If you just believe in yourself, you don't know where it can take you. 1, 2, 3. I like that one there.
Their streetball team, called the Nautic, formed nearly 25 years ago, comprised of mostly black immigrants. It's the subject of this documentary recently introduced into a BC school district. Rising to fame in the early 2000s, the team from Metro Vancouver was featured in international magazines and inspired teams around the world.
Going to Japan, China, and Asia is totally different than Vancouver. My coaches tell me, don't play this jungle ball. That's just terrible. So by me hearing that, it's like, okay, like...
New generation showing the impact of the Nautic reaches far beyond the game itself. Neitha Garcha, Global News, Surrey, BC.
And that's Global National for this Monday. I'm Farah Nasser. Tonight's Your Canada is the Gordie Howe International Bridge. It's set to open next year in Windsor, Ontario. We love seeing your Canada, so please email your photos to viewers@globalnational.com. Until tomorrow, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Good night.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Ontario Provincial Police say the body of a 25-year-old Indiana man was recovered yesterday in a lake in northwestern Ontario after he was first reported missing last Wednesday. They say the mishap occurred over 160 kilometers west of Thunder Bay after a canoe overturned in Quetico Provincial Park. Divers recovered the body of Grant Smith just before 4 p.m. yesterday. Police say 2 canoes capsized in an unexpected, fast-moving storm.
The UN Security Council adopted its first resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. The text backing the US drafted plan passed with 14 votes in favor and an abstention from Russia. It urges Israel and Hamas to fully implement the terms without delay. French political parties begin negotiations to form alliances after Emmanuel Macron's shock decision to call snap elections. The high-risk move comes after his centre-right alliance suffered a huge defeat by the far-right National Rally in Sunday's EU elections. And Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky arrives in Germany for talks with Chancellor Olaf Scholz on further military assistance and also the massive task of rebuilding after the war. Some estimates put that cost in the vicinity of €500 billion. Good day or good evening to you wherever you're watching. Thanks for joining us here on France 24. The UN Security Council has voted to adopt its first resolution supporting a ceasefire plan in Gaza. The proposal was put forward by the United States, Israel's main ally, which has vetoed most previous attempts. It passed with 14 votes in favour and Russia's abstention. The three-phase plan will begin with an initial 6-month ceasefire and the release of hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. This, along with the withdrawal of Israeli forces, implement this latest hostage release plan. It's Blinken's 8th visit to the region since the war began in October and comes as Israel's offensive in Gaza continues, with at least 40 deaths reported Monday in the preceding 24 hours. Hamas has said it would welcome the latest deal. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has expressed skepticism, saying he remains committed to destroying Hamas. Next up here in France, political parties are back out on the campaign trail after Emmanuel Macron's shock decision to call snap elections. The president dissolved parliament in response to the far-right's crushing victory in EU polls. He said he was confident French voters would make the right choice. Marine Le Pen's National Rally won nearly 32% in Sunday's vote compared to 15% for Macron's centrist ticket. Discussions are underway to form alliances from left to right and to the extreme.
I believe that Marion Maréchal has demonstrated
the National Rally's would-be prime minister should they win the snap elections. Well, the last time a French president dissolved the National Assembly was in 1997. Then Jacques Chirac lost his majority, which brought the left to power. France 24 Solange Mougin now takes a look at the few times this presidential power has been exercised in history.
It is rare, but it has been used before, to resolve political crises or to seek the upper hand. In France, the ability to dissolve parliament is written in the Constitution under Article 12. Yet this is only the 6th time it's been used under France's Fifth Republic. The first 2 times were under Charles de Gaulle. In October 1962, France's Prime Minister Georges Pompidou was censured, so de Gaulle called an early election. His party won an absolute majority, which reinstated their legitimacy, the rhythm of when France votes, putting parliamentary elections now before the presidential ones.
France's main left-wing parties have made it clear they are not willing to back President Macron's centrist alliance in order to keep out the far right, but they have agreed to put forward a unified ticket for the first round on the 30th of June. France 24's James Facina tells us more.
Well, after 6 hours, they've done it. They managed to come up with an agreement. The left parties will be rallying together in the elections to come. That's the announcement that's been made this Monday, pretty rapidly in the scheme of things, considering the amount of differences in the different parties on the left in France's political scheme here. But that is the confirmation years for them, but very important for them to get their support today. That's done. Still many discussions then to come throughout the week.
Well, the far-right wave was predicted in Sunday's EU vote, and while it didn't exactly materialise, there were other big gains across the bloc. Strong results, for example, for the extreme right in Germany, Italy, Austria and the Netherlands. France 24's Tom Kennedy takes a look at the winners and losers.
In Germany, Chancellor Olaf Scholz' SPD achieved its worst score in its history in the European elections, with just over 16% of the vote, taking 3rd place behind the far right, led by the AfD, a party at the heart of several scandals. The German Chancellor said there was no question of calling early parliamentary elections, as will be the case in France. A risky gamble announced on Sunday evening by President Emmanuel Macron, whose camp was defeated by the National Rally. In Spain, Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez's Socialist Party was down 3 points to around 30%, behind the right-wing Popular Party's 34%. In Hungary, Viktor Orban and his anti-immigration policies did poorly, falling below the 50% mark for the first time. With almost 45% of the vote, Orban's Fidesz achieved its worst result since the country joined the European Union in 2004. On the other hand, several heads of government have emerged stronger from the European elections, such as Giorgia Meloni, not however calling into question the hegemony of the Conservatives, still the leading group in the European Parliament.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has arrived in Germany for talks with Chancellor Olaf Scholz ahead of a major peace summit in Switzerland at the weekend. This Tuesday, the pair are to discuss further military assistance for Kyiv, in particular the expansion of its air defense system and also a massive task of rebuilding after the war. According to one estimate, that could cost nearly €500 billion. Monty Francis has the story.
a home left in ruins in Kherson on Monday, the result of a Russian missile. It's just a drop in the ocean when it comes to the destruction Ukraine has suffered after 2 years of a full-scale invasion by Russia. The World Bank, United Nations, and European Commission estimate it will cost at least €451 billion for Ukraine's reconstruction, an amount up $75 billion just in the past year, and increasing by the day. After 2 years of war, the Russians have destroyed some 2 million housing units, 8,400 kilometers of major roadways, and almost 300 bridges across the country. Missile strikes have also caused significant damage to Ukraine's infrastructure, including to the country's power grid. With the war still raging, Kyiv already has its sights on rebuilding once the war is over. At a two-day conference that kicks off in Berlin on Tuesday, hosted by German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, President Volodymyr Zelensky is expected to unveil 95 investment projects in need of funding, along with mayors from several Ukrainian cities, making their pitch to foreign ministers and private investors. But there will be one notable absence. Mustafa Naim, the head of Ukraine's reconstruction agency. On Monday, just a day before the conference was set to start, he resigned, citing systemic obstacles that prevented him from performing his job. Last month, the infrastructure minister was dismissed in a government reshuffle challenges as it looks toward a long-term recovery.
That's about it from us for the moment. As ever, you can get more news on our website, france24.com. You can see, as you may expect, the news that Emmanuel Macron has called snap elections, and he's urging French voters to make the right choice in those elections, which begin the first round on the 30th of June later this month. And that's it for the moment here on the France 24 Night Watch. Thanks for staying with us. See you next time.
Welcome to Eye on Africa. I'm Georgia Talbot-Smith, and tonight, medical crew and patients flee gunfire from RSF fighters in Sudan in a raid on the main hospital in North Darfur. The attack by the paramilitary fighters forced the closure of the hospital. Also, as the clock ticks down on South Africa's fraught negotiations between the ANC party and smaller rivals on how best to form a unity government, President Cyril Ramaphosa cancels plans to attend this week's G7 summit in Italy. And I speak to one of Africa's most prominent climate activists about how global warming poses huge risks to a generation of young learners across the continent. But first, medics from international aid group Doctors Without Borders working at the main hospital in the Pacific
with ABC News.
Today, Hamas welcomes a UN-backed proposal for a ceasefire in Gaza.
There's an opportunity to chart a different course. Hamas must take it.
A 25-year-old shot after 7 men forced their way into his home in southwest Sydney. An insider reveals details of a sophisticated scam operation swindling Australians from the outskirts of Dubai. And hundreds of Bonza airline staff officially stood down after the company went bust in April. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Ros Childs. The UN Security Council has adopted a US-drafted resolution backing a proposal for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. 14 council members voted in favour, with only Russia abstaining. North America Bureau Chief Jade McMillan has the details.
Well, this resolution adopted by the UN Security Council mirrors a three-step ceasefire proposal outlined by the US President Joe Biden, urged Hamas to accept this ceasefire plan.
A man has been shot in the leg during a home invasion in Sydney southwest. Police say 7 men terrorised a family with guns and machetes after forcing their way inside. Reporter Alexander Lewis has more from Liverpool.
Police say it's too early to say whether the wounded man was known to police, but investigators do have information to suggest that this attack was not random. 4 family members were at home here in Carnes Hill when 7 men wearing face masks forced their way inside. For anyone who may have information to contact Crime Stoppers. Ros.
Thanks, Alex. There's been another tragedy at a notorious stretch of coastline in Sydney South, with 2 women drowning yesterday afternoon after being swept off rocks. It comes just weeks after 2 men died while rock fishing at the same spot at Cornell. Reporter Jessica Rendell has more.
A group of 5 people were enjoying their public holiday yesterday, having a picnic here at Kamei Botany Bay National Park. After that picnic, they decided to head down to the water and explore the rocks by the ocean. That's when a wave came and swept 3 women from that group, spot for drownings by surf life-saving groups, and they are urging people to remain vigilant in areas like this, particularly around high tide.
Jessica Randall there. Hundreds of Bonza staff have had their employment terminated following an online meeting this morning. Reporter Jessica Ross has the details.
This online meeting, it started about 15 minutes late, which essentially added to the frustration that a lot of the staff have been feeling since this all went down. And at this meeting, they were told that they would be let go. In some ways, it brings to an end the uncertainty that they've been living with, because at the end of April, this company went into voluntary administration. And at that time, staff were stood down without pay for the entire month of April, and have essentially been waiting to see what will happen with the future of the company, whether they will be difficult to try and get it up and running again. But it remains to be seen if that can be the case.
Jessica, thank you. Opposition leader Peter Dutton says his party won't reveal a new emissions reduction target for 2030 ahead of the next federal election. It comes after the party just days ago rubbished the current target. Political reporter Evelyn Manfield joins us now from Parliament House. So Evelyn, what's the opposition leader said?
Well, in a press conference just earlier, opposition leader Peter Dutton didn't give any specifics about what short-term energy is shaping up to be a big election issue.
Thanks, Evelyn. Queensland's Treasurer is set to unveil his budget today, setting the stage for the October election. The government has already announced a number of measures, including 50-cent public transport fares, cutting car registration fees and raising the stamp duty threshold for first home buyers. Treasurer Cameron Dick has already revealed next financial year's budget will forecast a $3 billion deficit. The state election is 4.5 months away. The Premier says the budget has been designed to address rising household costs.
Queenslanders have told me right across the state that they want their government right now to address their cost of living. Reasonable step for a government to take when households are struggling with the cost of living like they are right now.
In 2023, Australians lost $2.7 billion to scams. It's hard to track down individual scammers as they're often part of elaborate syndicates operating overseas. But an investigation by the ABC's Background Briefing programme has been given a rare glimpse at the internal workings of one of these scam groups on the outskirts of Dubai. Reporter Gina McEwen has the story.
This particular compound itself, I didn't travel there, but this insider has given us these incredible insights. It's based on the outskirts of Dubai. It looks like an office complex. It's 4 buildings and it's surrounded. Thank you, Roz.
Singapore Airlines has sent offers of compensation to passengers on board a flight last month that encountered severe turbulence. One British man died and dozens of passengers were injured, including several Australians, when the plane hit severe turbulence while on its way from London to Singapore. The jet had to make an emergency landing in Bangkok. Singapore Airlines says those with minor injuries will receive $15,000. Those with serious injuries have been invited to discuss an offer, and all passengers will get a full refund of the airfare. A military plane carrying Malawi's vice president and 9 others has gone missing while on a short trip from the capital to a mountainous region in the country's north. The plane carrying a 51-year-old Saulos Chilima went off the radar after it left the nation's capital, Lilongwe. Malawi President Lazarus Chakwera says he was informed the pilot was unable to land due to poor weather and was advised to return to Lilongwe before communication was lost with the plane.
MDF soldiers are still on the ground, carrying out the search, and I have given strict orders about the progress of establishing what happened to our loved ones.
At least 7 people have been injured in Ukraine's northeast after coming under attack from Russian glide bombs. The weapons hit 3 residential areas on the outskirts of Ukraine's second-largest city, Kharkiv. Fighting has also renewed in the south, with Russian forces gaining ground towards the strategically important town of Chasiv Yar. Europe correspondent Catherine Diss filed this report from Kharkiv.
This is where a powerful glide bomb hit a small village on the outskirts of Kharkiv city. More strategic towns like Kramatorsk and Sloviansk.
An initial post-mortem has found that TV presenter Michael Mosley likely died of natural causes. The British doctor was reported missing after going for a walk on the Greek island of Symi, and his body was discovered 5 days later. The 67-year-old was found face up without any injuries, with a hand over his chest, which authorities say suggests he died of exhaustion and not foul play. Greek police say that Mosley likely died on the same day he was reported missing, a few hours after he left for a walk. The jury in the Hunter Biden gun case in the US state of Delaware has retired to consider its verdict after hearing closing arguments. The president's son is charged with making false statements about his drug use when he bought a revolver in 2018.
The jury here in Wilmington began its deliberations in the late afternoon. They were only in deliberations for about an hour when they were sent home for the day. The case due to begin in September. The jury here is due to resume its deliberations tomorrow.
Cheating in a relationship usually relates to romantic infidelity or affairs, but it can also involve financial infidelity, where couples hide spending, income or debt from each other. A recent survey by tracking firm Finder has found that 1 in 5 people see financial infidelity as worse than adultery. Here's Elizabeth Shaw, who's the head of Relationship Australia, New South Wales. Hi there, Elizabeth. So what sort of forms does financial infidelity come in?
Well, I think it is really featured by an act of deliberate
Elizabeth Shaw, good to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can keep up to date at news.abc.net.au and on ABC iView. Here are the top stories on ABC News. The UN Security Council has approved its first resolution endorsing a ceasefire plan in Gaza. The resolution urges Hamas to accept a truce proposal revealed by US President Joe Biden.
Singaporeans unraveling their family mysteries. A new series starts Saturday on CNA.
This is Asia Now.
Hello there, it's 12 p.m. in Singapore and Hong Kong, 9:30 in New Delhi and 11 o'clock in Jakarta. I'm Shahida Osman. At this hour,
14 votes in favor, 0 votes against, 1 abstention.
the UN Security Council endorses a proposal backed by the US for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza Strip in a rare diplomatic victory for the Biden administration. Israel is said to have authorized the proposal, while Hamas welcomes the deal. Parts of northern India swelter in a heat wave, with experts saying the current spell is the longest ever to hit the country. China too is warning of searing temperatures amid concerns the mercury could soar above 40 degrees Celsius. Plus, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi unveils his new cabinet as he begins his 3rd term in office. Coalition allies get 11 posts in exchange for their support, while the big 4 portfolios, defense, interior, finance and foreign ministries, remain with the ruling BJP. The UN Security Council has adopted a US drafted resolution backing a ceasefire proposal put forth by President Joe Biden. It passed with the Security Council resolution comes as US Secretary of State Antony Blinken tours the Mideast, his 8th trip there since the 7th of October attack by Hamas into Israel. Washington is looking to raise the pressure on the warring parties to accept the truce proposal by President Biden, even as Israeli troops make advances in
wing partner of Netanyahu, and I think that will be a big obstacle to do that.
Meanwhile, Indonesia's defense minister and President-elect Prabowo Subianto is in Jordan as the country hosts an international conference on the urgent humanitarian needs in Gaza. Mr. Prabowo has offered to send peacekeeping troops and help evacuate civilians affected by the conflict. He says Indonesia is also prepared to accept some 1,000 Palestinian refugees and send them to Islamic boarding schools in East Java to further their education. Aid agencies have repeatedly warned of the unprecedented crisis in the Palestinian enclave, where most are deprived of food, water, shelter, sanitation, and basic health services while under constant Israeli bombardment. A warning from the Indian government's top weather expert: the heat wave scorching the country is the longest ever, and it could get worse despite early monsoon rains bringing some relief. There have been more victims, and this time in the eastern state of Odisha. At least 8 people have died of suspected sunstroke in the last 3 days. Yesterday, 20 places in the state recorded temperatures of 40 degrees Celsius or higher. More hot weather is forecast for Odisha. Likewise, for the capital New Delhi, which hit a record high of nearly 50 degrees earlier this month, it has been an unusually hot summer for India, particularly for the northern region where the mercury soared above 45 degrees Celsius. From March to May, the country saw nearly 25,000 cases of heat stroke. 56 were fatal. Scientists blamed human-driven climate change. India is the world's 3rd biggest emitter of greenhouse gases and depends on coal power. The head of the country's weather department is calling for preventive measures, saying heat waves will be more frequent, durable, and intense. Otherwise, it could endanger future generations. A heat wave is baking other parts of Asia too. China is warning of record-breaking temperatures in the northern region. An orange alert, that is the 2nd most severe level, was issued yesterday for northern provinces. This after the 4th straight day of continuous heat wave with temperatures soaring to 35 degrees Celsius. Some areas may hit 40 degrees Celsius and higher. The National Weather Center says the heat is forecast to peak until Thursday. It believes the scorcher is linked to El Niño, the natural phenomenon that produces warmer ocean temperatures. Officials are taking precautions, especially for outdoor workers.
高温天气下，我们以机械代替人工，增加了无抛车、洒水车的作业频次，确保起到降尘降温的目的。同时，减少环卫工人的室外作业频次，增加扫除车的作业频次，由原来的每天的3次，增加到现在的6次。工人的室外作业频次，增加扫除车的作业频次，由原来的每天的3次，增加到现在的6次。
In Hebei yesterday, the province issued a red alert warning temperatures could hit 39 degrees Celsius. Some shops offered free chilled water for sanitation workers. Hong Kong Chief Executive John Lee says the UK is weaponizing its judicial influence to target China and the territory after the resignation of 2 British judges from the city's highest court. A Canadian judge will also retire after her term ends in July, becoming the 3rd non-permanent member to announce their departure in a week. One of the British judges, Jonathan Sumption, in an editorial published on Financial Times, said Hong Kong authorities were paranoid about political dissent and that the rule of law is profoundly compromised in any area where the government has strong opinions on. Hong Kong's leader, John Lee, disagreed with Mr. Sumption's comments. He said judges do not have expertise in political matters. Chinese and Hong Kong authorities have said that the national security law is necessary and has brought stability. Singapore Airlines has apologized and announced offers of monetary compensations to passengers on the flight, which was hit with severe turbulence last month. 1 man died and dozens of people were injured, some seriously. SIA said offers of compensation was sent to passengers by email yesterday. Passengers with minor injuries have been offered $10,000 in compensation. SIA has invited those who sustained more serious injuries to discuss a compensation offer. An advance payment of $25,000 for those requiring long-term medical care and asking for financial help will be provided for their immediate needs. The airline will also give all 211 passengers a full refund of their airfare. SIA also said they gave all passengers 1,000 Singapore dollars each. That's about $740 for their immediate expenses upon departure from Bangkok. Now, SQ321 was traveling from London to Singapore when it encountered rapid G-force changes over the Irrawaddy Basin in Myanmar. The plane was diverted to Bangkok. Your Asia Business Update is next with Henry as Apple brings ChatGPT into our iPhones. Henry.
Yes, indeed, Shah. We have the details on the new suite of AI features that Apple unveiled for the iPhone and the Mac. But billionaire Elon Musk rains on Apple's AI parade. He threatens to ban Apple devices from his companies. We'll dig into the security concerns he's raising.
Giles Gibson, CNA, Rome.
And you've been watching Asia Now. Don't forget headlines anytime at cne.asia and CNE 938 Radio. We're also available on Facebook, YouTube, and X. Thanks for your company.
Inside 600 square meters of forest in Italy, a critical pollinator is in the spotlight: butterflies. The ecosystem created in this greenhouse is modeled on part of a mountain range and rainforest area in south-central Tanzania. The Butterfly Forest project is contextualized in the Muse Tropical Greenhouse, which is strongly focused on the Tanzanian environment of the Udzungwa Mountains. This is because the museum has an ecology monitoring center in Tanzania, in that national park. Over there, some of our researchers have worked studying the dynamics of biodiversity.
Lì ci sono dei ricercatori nostri che hanno lavorato in passato nello studiare dinamiche della biodiversità.
High-altitude environments like the Udzungwa Mountains are highly suitable for studying the effects of climate change because they usually have no direct human impact. Our aim is that of being able to study better, to understand better what is happening. Therefore, everything that concerns deforestation or social problems linked to the conservation of the environment and species. The Butterfly Project by the Italian Science Museum Muse seeks to create public awareness on some of its research to study and protect the world's biodiversity.
A herdsman in Rwanda makes ends meet through cow tourism. In 2021, amidst the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, Gabo embarked on a remarkable journey that will reshape his community's narrative and breathe new life into rural tourism. What began as a simple act of sharing photos of his cows on social media evolved into a thriving enterprise known locally as Iberia Bigogwe. Growing up in Bigogwe, Gabo was struck by the lack of attention his hometown received as a tourist destination. Determined to showcase his beauty to the world, he leveraged social media to promote the area's picturesque landscape and rich cultural heritage.
Most of the activity is they just come here just to do cows-related activities. Like they come for meeting cows, to learn more about Rwandan cows, Rwandan history related to cows, how we go people take care of their cows, drink our fresh milk, especially direct milk from the cow.
At the heart of Iberia Bigogwe's success lies Ngabo's commitment to community empowerment. Through his venture, he has created employment opportunities for local source goods and services from neighboring businesses and contributed to the economic growth of the region. From purchasing handmade booths to hiring dancers for entertainment, Ngabo ensures that every aspect of his operations benefits the community. However, Ngabo's entrepreneurial journey has not been without its challenges, like having capital.
Don't have enough capital to invest in an activity which I want to do by now. Like I want to build like some accommodations, I want to have places where my visitors can come and learn more about cows.
To take in consideration, you can have like 20 cows in a tiny space, like 1 hectare. It cannot be possible. They will be starving.
In Rwanda, milking is usually done by women, as they have a very special technique of massaging the udder of the cow. And as you can see, this is one of the cow activities that are usually done by the tourists.
During the high seasons in the region, Iberia Bigogwe receives about 20 to 30 tourists on a daily basis.
Thank you for watching and privilege of your time. This is Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Woodman. Have a good life.